we're back with another episode of The Short Stacks, our shorter conversations with authors about their process and their books. I'm joined today by author Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, author of Friday Black, which is our pick for the Stacks Book Club this Wednesday, February 27th. As you know, The Stacks is a completely free show, and if you want to help be part of making this show happen every single week, I encourage you to check out joining the effort on Patreon. Patreon is a website where you contribute to the work we're doing on the show for as little as $1 a month. Patreon allows for us to launch new content like these short stacks. The fun thing about Patreon is that you get perks in return for your generosity. My personal favorite perk is our virtual book club, where we meet to discuss the Stacks Book Club picks through video chat. It's a great way to connect with the awesome community of readers. If you're interested in being a part of the Stacks Pack community, go to patreon.com/thestacks. And Patreon is spelled Patreon. If you prefer one-time contributions, check out paypal.me/thestackspod. Please do me a huge favor and rate and review the show. The word is building around the Stacks, and the more ratings and reviews we get, the more people we can reach, which means new exciting guests, better audio quality, and more giveaways. If you would take a few minutes wherever you're listening, especially on Apple Podcasts, and leave a rating and review. Okay, now it's time for the short stacks. I'm super excited for you all to meet our guest, author Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. All right, y'all, I am here today with our episode of The Short Stacks with author Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, the author of our book for this week, Friday Black. Nana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to do it.
Oh, well, we're really excited you're here. We're just going to dive right in. So the first question I always ask is, in about 30 seconds or less, tell us about Friday Black.
Okay, I have like a sort of pre-prepared thing about this. But, not knowing you were going to ask me that, but just because it's a collection of stories, right? So it's kind of hard to sort of pin it down. And now all that preface has made it more than 30 seconds. So start the timer here. It's kind of like if three people were sitting on a couch and the first one is like, I think this is really nice. It's really comfortable. And the second's like, yeah, I agree. Great butt feel, good lumbar support. And the third is sort of like, I agree. It's pretty comfortable, but I think we're ignoring the fact that it's made out of corpses. I think the book is sort of like that. It's a collection of short stories.
That weirdly works.
Yeah, but to be more specific, it's the stories that are concerned with the different ways people deny each other humanity, whether that be by racialized lines or through hyperconsumerism. And also sometimes the story is just about family.
Okay, well, it's definitely kind of like a couch of corpses and kind of like the second part, but I think the couch of corpses is good.
That's a better way to say it.
That feels like weirdly right, and it probably shouldn't, but that speaks to kind of my next question, which is, when you were growing up, were you always like the kid with the insane imagination in the group?
I think my group of friends that I grew up with, we all had like pretty good imaginations. We used to keep stories up serially, just orally, like serial stories that we keep up orally. So like we kind of all had to be sort of trained in like remembering places and just trying to be interesting in our mind's eye. And so I feel like we all were sort of like that. I think actually compared to some of my friends, I was a little bit more reserved about and like talking about like, oh, this is what I imagine or this is what I think of.
Yeah, because as I was reading the book, I kept being like, whoa, whose brain works like this? Like, your brain is magical.
Thank you. That's nice. I mean, everybody's brain is kind of magical. I think mine is just, luckily people are getting to see it right now.
Yeah, it just, for me, your brain works really different than mine. So reading your words, I was like having this experience of I'm reading this story or these stories, but I'm also thinking like, wow, where did he come up with this? Because a lot of the book feels like it's inspired by current events like Trayvon Martin and other events that have kind of inspired the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's been in the zeitgeist and in the air for, I don't know, like the last probably like 7 or 8 years at this point, that whole movement. And to think that this is kind of like what you created with that was really exciting for me as someone who isn't interested in that, but never would have thought to go the Finkelstein 5 direction or the Zimmerland direction.
Yeah, I think for somehow I've just had a way of the absurdity, the insanity. When I'm kind of hurt, I think as like a protection, I kind of go to sort of humor or funny places. I mean, kind of whenever I'm feeling anything, but definitely when I don't know what to do, I think making a joke is sort of my way often, or not exactly a joke, but saying something funny. And to my kind of horror, but not really horror. Someone recently posted a video on Twitter a long time ago of me that I had made sort of in response to Trayvon Martin being murdered. And I was like pretending to be this professor that was like, his name was like W.T. Fridgman or something. And his initials were like WTF, you know? And he was parodying Geraldo Rivera, who had said, "Don't blame racism, blame this hoodie." For him being murdered. And it was like it ended up being like a very ridiculous character. It was kind of funny. It was stupid and kind of crazy. And I don't know, something about that form helps me get my point across, I think, a lot easier.
Right. A little satire.
Yeah.
And kind of mocking.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
So obviously I kind of gave a little bit about the book, but where did your ideas come from for this book? Like, what inspired you to actually sit down and write it as opposed to kind of goofing off with your friends or making videos and stuff?
Well, I think the thing about writing is I like it a lot because it's free. When I made that video, I did it on my friend's camera, one of my really good friend's camera. I can afford the camera. And I say joking, but sort of honestly, like, reading through the library is free. I had the kind of parents who would drop you off to the library when it opened and kind of pick you up when it closed. I found comfort in books from an early age. I learned to love them. And I learned to love writing in a similar way. When I didn't like what's going on around me, I could write. And sometimes I didn't have my friends around me. So, now it's just me and a piece of paper or like one of my dad's legal pads. I think for something about me is I do like, if I get committed to something, I like something sort of tangible. So I like the feeling of, I wrote a chapter today. The satisfaction I feel after having just written something is like really, really intoxicating, and so I just learned to love that feeling, and I continued chasing it, and I started to see progress, and I continued, and luckily I got encouraged at the right places, and I sort of just stayed with it.
Yeah. Well, kind of in that same vein, how do you know when you're done?
I think you have to just decide this is where, at this point, as far as I can take it, because, if I had a chance, I'd probably revise every single story in this first book. I think you have to sort of decide about like where I'm at now as a person, where I'm at now as an artist, where this story is at now as an entity on its own, and, let it go off to school, let it go off to be in the world. It's hard. It isn't easy because you're trying to chase this feeling that this like sort of perfection that isn't really real, or I don't know that it exists exactly, but you have to. I think you have to sort of just. It's like sort of a leap of faith,
right? Well, yeah. I guess, and to that same end, where did you start with this book? Because obviously it's a collection of stories, so I'm assuming one story came before the other. But how did you I guess literally, where did you start writing? How did you start writing it? And then also, how did you decide what story would start the collection?
First, I had the very, very first story. I want to say I was in college. I had just written a couple of stories that my professor, Lynn Tillman, liked. And neither of those stories is in this book. But I was getting more and more serious about trying to be a writer. I'd applied to the MFA at Syracuse. And, I kind of wanted to try to get a chance to use my real life. So I think I wrote the story in retail. A story very different from the one that's here, a version that's different. Then I think, as is the case with me and as kind of allowed this book to be, I also have this other part of me that's really likes to be a lot, that deals with difficulty in a way less literal way and a way more sort of around the bend kind of way, especially when I don't know exactly how to process. Sometimes I just mirror exactly what I feel like I'm feeling, as is the case with the blackness scale. Sometimes I'll literalize and concretize something that I'm feeling abstractly, and so that's how you kind of get the blackness scale on the Finkelstein 5. But then I think the next story I wrote after the Finkelstein 5 was Lark Street, actually.
Oh.
And I think I wrote it, and I sort of felt like, oh no, this is dumb, or you can't do this. And I just sort of left it alone. And then I spent the next couple of years in MFA sort of trying to figure out, do I write these kind of stories? Do I write that kind of story? Do I write these kind of stories? Do I write that kind of story? I asked, working with George, who was my thesis advisor for the manuscript that would become this book, I kind of like tried to get him to tell me like, which kind of writer should I be, And I was like, should I write like realistic? Should I write like these realistic stories? Should I do these more surreal, sort of weird satire stuff? Should I do this kind of that? And he was sort of just like, yes. I'm really glad for that, because I think that's kind of one of the things I like about this book, and one of the things I like about myself as a writer is I don't feel bound to any one particular thing.
I mean, it definitely comes through that way. In the interest of full disclosure, we already recorded the episode where we talk about your book. It's interesting to hear you say some of the things that we picked up on, and then also hear you say things that I hadn't really thought about. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I wish I could go back and have that conversation again.
And it reminds me, and I forgot to say the second part of your question, which was the Finkelstein Five. When I wrote the Finkelstein Five, though, that's when I sort of, a bunch of back and forth congealed. And I wrote it might have been the very next story after those first two that I wrote, or at least started. It took me longer than any other story I've ever written to write. But I think when I got it, I was like, this is something I can do, me specifically. This is something I think that I can do that I don't think another writer can do.
Yeah.
And but I think, and more importantly though, like I was in college when Trayvon Martin was murdered. Me and my friend, the same friend whose camera I borrowed to make that video I was talking about earlier, we made these pamphlets to sort of, I don't know, scream from the mountaintops about the injustice of Trayvon's being murdered. And we made like 500, and we spread them around the campus in the middle of the night, or like 3 in the morning. And I went to sleep thinking like, great, I fixed racism. And I did this pamphlet anonymously, but I still felt really good about it. And I woke up, expecting to see like a whole bunch of change. Everything was like, I wanted, some kind of big upheaval. Nothing happened. And I didn't like that. But when I did write the Finkelstein 5 story, I felt that same feeling that is like, I wanted it to be out in the world, even if no one knew my name was attached. I thought it was like something important. And so for me, Finkelstein 5 it really just had to be the first story in this book, because I figure if people read one thing of mine and nothing else, I wanted it to be that story.
Wow, I love that.
So yeah, that's why it's the first story. Because maybe they'd be like, well, that was dumb, and just put it down. but at least ing maybe I would have hit someone a little bit.
Do you get a lot of good response on the Finkelstein 5?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a story that your first story in your first book. I think I do get a lot of good overt response to it. But in some ways, just because the way people consume content, I think that this book's success in a lot of ways is that story's success. People sort of are quick to judge things, and I think that story starting the way it also sort of it frames the way people think of me as a writer. Now it's like, I don't only do the surreal thing, but because of that, like that's what people focus on, because that's the first story. And race is something I talk about explicitly, and because of the way I do it in that first story, it's almost like I'm a race writer now,
Sure, but I hate that.
Yeah, it's a limiting thing, and it's a conscious decision. I think in some ways, I didn't realize how much that was going to be a thing.
Right.
But I don't mind it, because I think the story is important. But if I would say the first story would have been Friday Black, the title story, I think people would read the whole entire book very differently.
Totally, because it's what sets it up. It's what sets you up. But how did you decide to use Friday Black as the title then?
I was strongly encouraged by my publisher to not. I wanted to be the title. No, it was going to be called something else. It was going to be called How to Sell a Jacket.
Okay.
Which again, like for me, is it's a much quieter. But I think they were right. There was a lot of how-to books at the time, like literary how-to, like books that are not how-to books that use the how-to title. So I think it was like a way to step out. And I think my agent Meredith Kafel-Simonoff. I had thought of the idea of Friday Black prior to even when it was actually a manuscript, but I went with How to Sell a Jacket, and then we ended with Friday Black after discussing it for a little bit.
Interesting.
A little bit of a stronger title.
Yeah.
Punchy and aggressive,
Yeah. And it fills the cover really beautifully. Like the way that it looks on the cover is like the perfect size and shape.
Yeah. And by calling it the Friday Black thing, though, you kind of, on a weird, like, I don't know, just on like a word level, you get some of the How to Sell a Jacket thing, that resonance of like, consumerism, and then just on a baseline level, I'm sure just on some people's reading, just the word Black being in the title is something.
Totally. That's so right on. Speaking of the cover is from another story, the imagery. How did you decide? Like, I'm just really fascinated kind of how this all came to be, because I'm not really a huge short story reader. I haven't been, but in the last year or so, there have been some really great collections, including yours, that have come out. And so now I'm thinking about short story collections and also essays in a different way, because your work, it's not one, while you have themes that are consistent, it's not one thing. It's a lot of things. So how do you draw, like, how did you decide that was the story that would be the imagery?
There's so many different great short story collections this year, and I like that you say that, because I'm really happy to be like come out the same year as like Jamel Brinkley and Nafisa Thompson Spires.
Oh my God, so good.
Heads of the Colored People. I think it's a beautiful book. Lucky
so
Man. Yeah, they're the real deal, and it's like kind of an honor to be out in the same kind of time as them.
Yeah,
as them both. But actually, again, I got super lucky. The designer at Houghton Mifflin read the book. He really liked the book, and that's what he came up with. Wow. And I saw it, and I was happy right away. I had just driven from the city to back up to Syracuse through like a crazy blizzard in a car that shouldn't be driving in the snow. And I was like, I saw the email from my agent, but I couldn't check it because I was like trying not to spin out all on the highway. And I got home, I opened the the attachment that had the cover, and I couldn't. It was interesting because I didn't know what it was at first, because your eye kind of wants to go straight to the middle, and I was like, I see like strings. What is this? And then I had this effect of seeing the full thing, and I really, really, really liked it. I really, really loved it, actually.
Yeah, I had that same experience when I had the book in my hand. I never really looked at the cover seriously. And the book came out in October, and I think I got it in November. Like, I've had it for a while, and I just read it last week. And in the process of reading it, I got to that story, and I was like, oh, I feel like there was a spider on the cover. Let me look at that again. And then I was like, you're an idiot. How did you miss that?
Yeah, I like it because it's subtle, but also bold. You know what I mean? Like, which again, like for me, I feel like the guy's name is Mark Robinson. He really just did a great job. And with the Lion, the Spider thing, I like that as well, because then besides the resonances of the retail / consumerism thing, and I don't know, the Black thing, you kind of get some of the like sort of the heritage thing as well with the cover too. So I felt like altogether, I love, like I don't love a lot of book covers, but I actually like I know I got lucky with my book cover. I love it.
Well, you might not have gotten lucky. You might have just had a really good team.
Mark Robinson just did his thing completely.
Yeah.
He really, really killed it.
I love that. Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books. Duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. I do have to ask you. So I oftentimes will open up to my listeners to ask questions. And one of my listeners, Reggie, he had mentioned that he could kind of feel influences or callbacks to both Parable of the Sower and Song of Solomon. And were you influenced by some other writers that you kind of were giving shout outs to?
Yeah, I think I know you're talking about the Reggie Reeves on Instagram. Yep. I think I've seen him. Yeah. What's crazy is I wasn't consciously sort of paying homage to Song of Solomon, which is a book I love, and I think Toni Morrison is everything. But I know I was influenced by like the 7 days. I had to have been, Right. But I didn't consciously do it, which is crazy. Because like when I by the time the book was done, and I was thinking, and I don't know, someone else had brought it up. One of my friends who had read it in MFA, and I was like, oh, like sometimes you don't even know where you're getting your stuff from. But so that one for sure. The other one, not so much. But that, yes, I didn't do it consciously, but I know I was influenced by the great Toni Morrison.
Yes, that she's just like inherently part of you as a writer is kind of a nice thing to think about, that you just are giving her love without knowing.
I hope so. I hope I am, because she is the best of the best.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. These are some of my favorite questions. One of which is, who was the first person you let read this book? So not like your agent and the people who worked with you on it, but like when it was done, who were you like, you need to read this?
And not like George either.
Not your advisors or people who kind of read it through the process, but more like when it was finished.
Okay, and I'm pretty like close to the chest with my writing stuff. It might have been like one of my like more than my best friend, like my brother Danny. I think I sent him a good amount of it.
Okay.
If not all of it. And sometimes what I do is, you know what I mean? I think I like sometimes send different stories to different people.
That makes
sense.
But
I want to say my friend Danny got maybe the first writer person to see the whole thing.
That's very cool. I just always love to hear that, because I know that sharing your work, obviously like your process, you have a writer's group or you have advisors and things, and they see you throughout the process, and that's kind of their relationship. But then when it becomes ready to like share with other people who aren't as involved in the process, like that moment.
Yeah, it's scary. And and everybody, it's a scary process. And I mean, also for me, like I'm just generally like, I rather really, really wait a while before I get into that place. But it's hard to like put your stuff out there like that.
Yeah, I'm sure. How do you decide to name your characters? Where do those names come from?
It's so hard. I don't know. It's so hard. I struggle with it. Sometimes one thing, so like with like Amma, in the last story, I wanted a cool ass like young girl that you couldn't make her white, basically, or I want her to be like her. She's like, by her name, she's got a name by her name, and it's not like necessarily a part of the story in a way that I think it like had to be, but like it's just. It's a name that you maybe don't always see, but for me, I do. My name is Nana. My little sister's name is Efwa. My older sister's name is Adoma. And those kind of names rarely are in the literature that isn't overtly exploring, I don't know, whatever kind of immigrant experience or whatever it is. Right. So sometimes I do that. Other than that, I just struggle. It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it has to be hard because you're like, oh, well, I don't want that person to think I'm writing about them, but like, I need a Becky.
Yeah, but sometimes I do it actually like on to be like a little like shout out. I gave one of my friends a little shout out with the last name and what in this book, So
nice. I have a friend who wrote his first book, and my name is in it, and I literally was like, everybody, I'm famous, I'm in a book. So I'm sure your friend appreciated it.
Why not because I forgot to put him in the acknowledgments, and I should have. So I like when I got a revision chance, I changed that name. So yeah,
that's awesome. What kind of stuff were you, Nana, reading, listening to, watching while you were writing these stories?
Like everything, because I was in the MFA. Okay. I was getting exposed to. I read Gail Jones for the first time. There's like so much stuff that I can't even think of like anything. I was reading my peers' work a lot. I was reading there's some books that I remember well from the time. Texaco and another book called Corregidora, and just so much stuff. Like it's like stacks and stacks of stuff. If I get like my Instagram, I used to take pictures of the stacks of from that time. But I was reading more widely than I ever had at any time before. You know, I read Black Boy for the first time then. I read a lot of people for the first time, but I was reading poetry for the first time really seriously. I was reading memoir more than I had previously. That's at that time was when I read the work of people who became my friends and mentors, like Dana Spiotta and Arthur Flowers and Bruce Smith, and people up in Cuse. So yeah, I was reading a lot, and also a lot of different things.
That's so cool. And I'm sure that also informed kind of how you were writing, like that you might be influenced in a moment and be like, oh, let me try that. Let me throw that in.
Absolutely. And just all over the place with it and really getting it. That's when I first read, it's not the first time I read ZZ Packer, but I read ZZ Packer. I read Bolaño for the first time. I read a lot. Yeah, just a lot.
I love that. That's so exciting. Do you have rituals around food or beverage or just traditions or habits that you do around your own writing? Like when you sit down to write, where you go, what you're drinking, all that kind of stuff.
Do people have cool food rituals? Because I don't know that I do. That's interesting. I wish I did.
Some people do. Or like we had Crystal Hana Kim on, who wrote "If You Leave Me," and
I know.
She has candy around, and she drinks Earl Grey tea, but she uses the same tea bag all day. So she's like, by the end of the day, I have it's basically a loosely flavored water. Or, different people have different things.
I don't. So I don't, but what I tried to do for the first time last summer, and especially because is it Jamie Amberg was doing the 1,000 words a day thing.
Oh, wow.
And I was trying to boost myself into some kind of ritual, because I very rarely had one. I'm kind of like a binge writer. I won't write for a long time, then I'll go crazy, and then write a lot, then I'll stop again. But for this period of 3 weeks, I was writing 1,000 words a day, and I was trying to be all my wellness type stuff. So I was meditating in the morning, and I go to the gym. I found there's a spot I'm up in Syracuse, and I stayed up here even during the summer. I usually come down to outside the city where I'm from, Spring Valley, Rockland County. Usually, when I don't have to be up here, I'm down there or in New York City. But I stayed up here to do the writing stuff, and I did discover this Roji tea house, which is kind of became my secret spot, because they stay open till 12, and I may even go there today. They had a nice lemongrass tea. I would go there late. And I think I would bring my computer, my laptop, but not a charger, and try to go until the charger my computer started dying or they closed. And I'd have a tea with me only. It'd just be a tea, and I'd be drinking tea. Maybe I get one, have them re-steep it once. But yeah, so I don't have a big one, but it is nice if I can get that sort of. I tried to recreate that sort of tea house vibe in my apartment actually the other day, and I burned some Palo Santo and
Oh.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I do that whole thing.
Well, I'm in California. I'm in LA, so it's very you'd fit right in over here.
That's the thing. Yeah, no, I've become, I got sweetgrass, I got Palo Santo, I got sage now. People have given me that stuff, and I've kind of adopted that whole thing. But it's Syracuse here, so I'm jealous because we don't have the sun, and we're all pretty sad.
Yeah.
But
no, thank you.
Yeah, I do that, and I'll do my little ginger tea if I can. Ideally, I won't be eating. A lot of time I'll be drinking something, not too caffeinated, but a little caffeinated. I'm not big on coffee, but I'll do the green tea. I used to go to Dunkin' Donuts. That's that's my old version. I used to live on a street where there was a Dunkin' Donuts, and I go into the corner and drink my green tea, and maybe get the blueberry donut or whatever it is.
I lived in New York for a while, so I'm familiar with the Dunkin' Donut thing, but I'm a Californian, so it was that's a very specific part of my life, Dunkin' Donut time.
Yeah, and the West Coast, you guys take the donuts pretty seriously.
Very
it's a
serious
different thing. I didn't know that till the first time. You guys I know. Yeah, you must look down on the donuts. Those are not real donuts, huh?
Yeah, I'm a very serious donut person. Specifically, me. Donuts are one of my favorite. My brother says my motto is run and eat donuts, because there was a period of my life where I was training for a marathon, and all I was doing was running, and then being let's get donuts. So he was you're just run and eat donuts, girl.
No, I had no idea, but I went to the Bay, and like all the things that were open like late night were like donuts, and it was like
Yes. Where were you in Oakland?
I was basically I was at Berkeley and Stanford, but then I was like going to Oakland like when we were at like late night, and yeah,
You
and
probably went to my donut shop on Lakeshore. I bet that's what you're talking about.
I definitely did because our Uber driver one time we did an Uber pool and like he like went the other people that came with us ended up like this drunk couple that we have to go to so and so donuts.
Yep.
And the Uber driver was cool and he took us and they went and got some and they got some for everybody. And I thought that the donut was cool. I didn't feel like it was like worth all that.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe it wasn't my place.
It was. I mean, also I didn't get like there was like one specific donut that they thought was the best. Like they're like, oh, this is the best one ever. And they got that one only for themselves, and then for us, we got like the more like pedestrian donuts. I guess they thought it'd be wasted on us. Anyways, it was a long line, and in the middle of the night. So yeah, I didn't know the donut thing was so West Coast such a big deal, but I've seen now that it is.
Yeah, well, I'm from Oakland, and I had like my local donut store did the donuts at my wedding. Like I didn't outsource it to like fancy donuts. I was like, no, someone can pick up the 150 of the donuts that I like from the teeny tiny store that I've been going to since I was in kindergarten every Friday. Like it was very important that I had the correct
That's
donuts.
Awesome. I like Oakland a lot. I like that Bay Area, especially.
The Bay Area is so great.
Especially after being out in Winterfell up here.
Yeah.
I really like the Bay Area.
I don't envy you in late January in Syracuse as far as weather goes, for sure.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
You teach up there, right? You're teaching at Syracuse. Yes. What's that like? Like, what are you teaching? And what do you like? How do your students respond to you being like, oh, by the way, I'm just going to pop on to Seth Meyers. And like, by the way, my book is everywhere. And I'm kind of like this amazing new star of literary world.
Last semester I was teaching. And like, that was when everything is very new, for me. Like my book came out came out in October, all this craziness, late October. So it hasn't been too long yet. But my students they're like my best cheerleaders, They were pretty excited. On Seth Meyers, for example, I shouted them out in the group chat. They were so happy about that. But I'm pretty low key about it. Like especially up here, like during this semester, I try to be really present with it, my class. And one of my students made a joke this semester about like, how come we're not reading this book? Have you heard of it? It's a great book called Friday Black. And I was like, because I hate teachers who teach their own stuff, and I will never do that.
What are you teaching? What's the class?
That class was it's a reading literature. Like it's basically we're reading a bunch of stuff, and the way I'm kind of gearing it is sort of thinking about how work is that even may not seem inherently political, sort of political. Just we're reading a bunch of cool stories. We just had a class. We read Story of Your Life by Ted Chiang, the story that Arrival is based off of, the movie Arrival. Mm-hmm. And oh my God, we had such a good discussion. We had such a great discussion. I felt smarter. My brain kind of hurt from thinking about the nature of free will and time. It was really great. Then I teach a workshop where it's just like, students are going to do their own writing stuff. Then I also teach 2 sections of Intro to Creative Writing where it's poetry, fiction, and creative non-writing. And so we just had great classes in that class as well. We read Skinhead by Patricia Smith, really intense, really dark poetry. And then we listened to this talk by Roger Reeves, who's another great poet, about like sort of what is the work of poetry in this age of sort of brutality. And I had a really good class, so I'm like kind of gassed about it.
I love that. That's so great. Well, I just have a few more questions for you. One of which is, since your book has gotten like some acclaim and some success, and you've been really cool places, and like nothing makes me happier than to see authors getting shine. Yeah. Like I feel like we don't treat our authors with nearly enough respect, but that's just my own high horse that I'm on. But who's like the coolest person that you've heard from that's expressed interest in your book, or someone that read it where you were like, oh my God, I can't believe so and so read my book?
There's a couple people now because of when you start floating your book into Hollywood world, all of a sudden now all these people who like, I can't think of anyone, but I had a really good lunch when I was in LA with Trevante Rhodes, and he was really dope. This is the actor who was just in Bird Box with Sandra Bullock, and he was also in Moonlight. Right. And he was just really dope, and like just put me on game about that area and the sort of the culture, and that was really cool. Yeah, I don't that was a good one. But there's been some other people where I'm just like, whoa, you know. So I don't want to say I don't want to say anyone's name who I haven't confirmed it myself.
Okay.
You know, yeah.
I see.
But
You've heard some rumors.
I've heard people tell me about people who have read it, and I'm just like, that's something else. But that said, like, you know, when I go on these events and I went to Texas and people had read it in Texas, and I was just floored by that. Anybody reading in Texas, you know.
Right.
So it's all good for me.
I love that. Well, if you were going to recommend another book or a few books to people who have read your book and loved your book, what would you say? Like what direction would you point people? And I know there's a million directions you could go and there's no right answer here. I'm just always curious to hear kind of like what line you might take someone on if they loved your book.
If you liked my book a lot, honestly, like I would say check out Heads of the Colored People. I would say that first. If you want, like, I don't know, something in my sort of vein, maybe check out, you know, Pastoralia, George Saunders' book, or 10th of December, actually, I guess. Well, I mean, like, after being with my book a lot, I had a lot of fun. These books are definitely not that similar. Fruit of the Drunken Tree by Ingrid Rojas Contreras. I just think it's a beautiful book, as I think is The Incendiaries by R.O. Kwan. Oh, and They're There by Tommy Orange.
Yes.
I think, and She Would Be King is another one. So I think just because those are books that I've been reading recently and I like them, so maybe that might mean that someone who liked my book might like those.
Right. That's like a list of just great 2018 books that came out, right?
Yeah, there's been, and put Crystal Hannah Kim right in that group too.
Yeah. There's been so many amazing debuts by authors of color in 2018 that just like rocked my world. It's been so fantastic.
I mean it seriously. Like I really feel, add My Sister the Serial Killer too. I just feel like very, very lucky to be considered peers with these people, you know, the people that you mentioned. And I know them, like I've gotten to meet Crystal a couple of times. I know
she's
Ingrid.
A doll.
Such a dope, smart, great
I just loved her. But I have to be honest, everyone I've spoken to kind of that group that you've listed, also Asia Gable was on the show. And
I met her too. She's dope. She's dope.
So cool. Just like so many cool, interesting people. And it's changed the way that I think about authors and writing, because it's changed for me as someone who's a reader and not a writer, like pretty heavily not a writer. It changes the way that I think about the work, and just that like you and this group of people, these new young authors who are coming out, that you all have something to say about the world that I live in, but that you're not separate from the world that I live in.
Yeah.
That there's like a humanity between all of us, and that authors, because like it's kind of the same thing with actors. Like you think like, oh, actors are famous and they're different. And as someone, you know, authors are kind of like famous people for me as a book lover, but to like actually connect with you all and recognize how you're just putting words, you're just turning this into a certain kind of art, and someone else might turn it into another kind of art, but that we're all in the same space, and how you guys create these stories has been just unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And the thing you're saying, I felt it myself because I think, and that's why I kind of like to sort of like, it's funny because you go to these events and people sort of, I don't know, they try to like pamper you, like, do you want the tea? Do you want this? And it's like, I'm a regular, I'm cool, you know, I'm just like everybody else. And I love that this group, because they're so welcoming. And again, like for me, like my book came out a little later than all theirs. My book came out late in the year. You know, I think some of them had kind of got to know each other from earlier book stuff. And you know, they didn't have to be so nice to me, I guess, you know, like the people that I've met recently, like, yes, I mean, top to bottom, the people, especially this year, but also like outside of that, but like the people I've got to meet on the road this past year, their kindness has been crazy. And it's been really great for me, because even though we are, especially all very regular people, and that's what I think it kind of gets forgotten the way we think about artists in general. The situation is very specific, and now you have a cohort of people who understand what you're going through, and that's like invaluable, you know? So so for me, like, I was like, oh my God, you're like a normal person. You're like a normal person. You're like friendly and you're nice, you know? So that whole group of them, I feel very lucky to I'm glad my book came out now.
Yeah.
I feel really lucky about that.
I feel the same way about my podcast because I've been able to talk to so many cool people. I'm like, I'm so glad I started this when I did with all these awesome books coming out.
Yeah, you got a good group. Like they're cool. Like they're genuinely good people, and I just feel lucky. And so many of them. Nicole Chung, I want to put her in that group too. Like just a bunch of
we're doing her book right alongside yours in February. So.
Oh yeah, yes.
So I'm pumped.
Yes.
I'm talking to her later this week, so I can't wait. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And Nana's book is called Friday Black, and we're going to be discussing it on Wednesday. So if you haven't read it yet, read it because we are spoiling it on the show. So make sure you read it and then listen.
Sure.
Nana, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I really do appreciate it. This was fun.
Me too. Thank you. All right, y'all, that does it for us today. Thank you for listening to the Short Stacks, and thank you to Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah for coming on, and thank you to the folks at Mariner Books for giving us a copy of Friday Black. Join us this Wednesday for the Stacks Book Club, where we'll be discussing Friday Black. To help support the Stacks and earn awesome perks, go to patreon.com/thestacks or make one-time contributions at paypal.me/thestackspod. Make sure you're subscribed to the Stacks wherever you get your podcasts, and if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to rate and review the show. Kenny Sparks is our sound editor, our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tigirigis. This show was created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.